So this video is mostly meant to serve as a supplement to the blog post of the same name, which can be found on fold.space, fold with a 0. It'll be linked in the description, but that blog post is now kind of outdated. I've been using NixOS for I think close to 2 months, maybe longer. But I stand by what I say in this blog post, so I thought it'd be useful to make a video version of it. I've been using Linux for quite a long time now, so I think that gives me some level of credibility. Way back in high school when I was running Ubuntu, and as you can see, I've tried a lot of different operating systems over the years, so I'm familiar with most. Arch, I've also used variants of Arch like Manjaro and stuff like that. I also briefly ran TailsOS for maybe a week in high school as a daily driver because you can set up persistent storage on it. And then during all of this time, I've also used Windows on the side, mostly for gaming, up until around 2021. That's sort of the last time, or it might have been before that when I last used Windows. Around the time of Windows 8 being finished with and done was when I stopped using Windows. I want to go over some basic terminology. So you've got Nix, and this is package management software. This can be installed on any platform. So if you like some of the stuff I talk about in this video, you can install Nix without installing the operating system. You can just say, hey, I'm going to stick to Windows, but I do like some of the advantages of Nix, so I'm going to start using that. And then you've got NixOS, which is the actual operating system that's kind of built with those Nix or sort of adjacent principles in mind. Obviously, it's going to have much more support for the Nix related features, and those are going to be much more deeply integrated into the system. Then you have what I'm just going to call config.nix. These are the configuration files. So there's not actually just one, there's your hardware configuration file. Then you've got configuration.nix, and you can put these anywhere in your system. By default, they're in /etc/NixOS. But if you move them out of there, then you don't have to worry about like using sudo to edit these files. I keep mine just in my documents folder. All of my Nix files are completely open source, so that's a NIRI setup with a lot of integration of NVim into the system and things like that. But you can store them anywhere on your system. So if I say config files or config.nix, that's what I'm referring to. So why NixOS when there's so many different options, and with everyone online saying the learning curve for NixOS is incredibly steep? You have less downtime. If I update my system and something goes wrong, I can just quite easily roll that back, and it's an incredibly stable system because of how it builds and packages software. I would argue it's actually very easy to manage. Everyone installs software and then they forget the software they've installed, and then by the time you get around to it, you've got just a ton of bloat lagging down your system, and you can't remember what you installed, you can't remember what you've got installed, what you haven't. I can just quite easily go to a configuration file and see, do I have this installed, yes or no. In fact, I can actually demo that since I'm in. I can just load up my text editor, and then I can just say, let's see, do I have Trezor Suite installed? Yeah, I can see not only is it installed, but I can see where it's installed, and then you can see, all of those related things. So it allows you to very quickly and very easily sort of do that and manage that. It scales really well. This kind of ties into easier management, but as you install more and more software, maintaining it becomes very easy. So it just scales well when you've been using it every day for however long. I can't see me running into any major problems on NixOS, whereas with Windows, for example, everyone I know who uses Windows, they're basically, after about a year of using it, they're non-stop talking about how it's slower than it used to be, it's not as snappy, it's bloated, they've got a bunch of software installed, and things like that. You can also share configs really easily on NixOS. I've got several servers set up on my NixOS, and I can just share those as a single file that a friend can just import, and they know it's been tested and it works pretty well. Things like Task Warrior sync servers, Joplin sync servers, Vault Warden, and I can just share those with a friend and they can quite easily use it. Wrong way again. In terms of packages, NixOS actually has by far the most packages of any system. I'm going to explain what these mean. So Ubuntu is just sort of apt-get, if you're familiar with that. That's Ubuntu, Debian, those sort of package stores. They have 72,000. The Arch, with the Arch user repository, comes in at 104,000 packages. But if you remove duplication, so packages that are one-to-one the same, so not like different packages of the same thing, or a different build of the same software. This is just pure duplications. You end up at 82,000 packages with the Arch user repository, but without duplications. However, Nix, just in Nix packages alone, is 122,000 packages, and that's not including things like Nix Flakes, where people can set up their own flake files for basically anything you can find. So obviously, if your goal is to get as many packages available on Linux as possible, then NixOS is a way to do that. And on average, these packages are more in date than other distributions and app stores. There are some issues where if it's a very niche package, it won't actually get updated that often at all, but you can even fix that yourself with very little effort. I've done that myself for Railway Wallet, which is an Ethereum wallet using the is it called Railway Protocol? But we'll get into that a bit later. In terms of features that I think are really important on Nix and why it's so appealing, Nix Shell I think is one of the best ones. I can put a file in any directory with this, and then when I'm in that directory, I can just do nix-shell, and it will create a shell that has these packages installed. I do not need Node.js installed on my entire system. I just don't. It's bloated. I don't want it there. I don't need it there. Python I do have installed system-wide, so it's kind of a bad example. But there's so many packages where you're only needing them for a single project, but yet they're now going to be installed on your entire system till the end of time. Whereas with this, you just do nix shell, do whatever you need to do, and then when you write the word exit, it's going to exit that nix shell, and these are not going to be installed anymore. You can also do nix shell-p. This is really good for if there is a piece of software that you're only going to need to use once, or a piece of software that you're just testing out. You can do nix shell-p, and then you could do, let's say, ungoogled Chromium or VS Code or VS Codium or whatever. You can then launch VS Codium through that same shell, and then you can use it. And once you exit that shell, that piece of software is no longer installed, so it's very useful. I'm fairly new to tech and programming, but I've noticed, especially on Windows systems, after a while using Python with all these different versions and stuff like that, it starts to just behave in... It gets difficult to maintain, so Nix shell files, which is just shell.nix, is, in my opinion, very useful. Next is atomic rollbacks. Now, to be fair, NixOS is not the only implementation of atomic rollbacks. You can find this in, I believe Fedora has an atomic variant. But what's nice is if you're on a regular system, you know, and Slack updates and now it's broken, that can be a huge issue, especially if you've got a daily stand-up or whatever else 10 minutes from now. It's going to be a nightmare. Like I said, like it says here, you're going to have to Google, you know, what version you're after and hope that you can get it. Whereas with atomic rollbacks and how they're implemented in NixOS, you can roll back an individual package. So if you update your entire system and then Slack is broke, you can decide, okay, I'm just going to roll back Slack for now. And then you can just change one file to say, hey, do not automatically update Slack next time I run an update. And then you can kind of test it out at a future date. Or you can roll back your entire system, and both of these things can be done without rebooting your computer. You don't have to turn it off, turn it back on, none of that. You can just enter a single command in your terminal and you roll back. Or you can roll back at boot. So if you do a full system update and it is so sufficiently broken that you can barely use the system, you turn it off, you turn it back on, and when you turn it on, you just scroll down to a previous generation, click enter on it, and then you'll be rolled back. Good as new, basically. In conclusion, I think NixOS is actually not as difficult as most people make it out. I think people overestimate the difficulty, especially now that we've got tools like Claude Code or Mistral Vibe or GPT or whatever Grok's doing, or OpenCode or whatever else. With AI tools, it's very easy to get them to build a configuration file for you that is pretty good, and then you can add to it easily enough. Because if there's something you don't understand in it, you can just copy and paste that bit to AI, and it will be able to tell you, like, hey, here's what this is doing, here's how it works. So you can pretty much always just tinker with it yourself. It's not that complicated. I think if you're familiar with Windows, it can be, but I actually wouldn't say if you use an AI tool, it's any more difficult than going from Windows to any other variant of Linux, really. And I think there's just a lot of advantages, so people should be much more willing to give it a try. Thanks for watching. Obviously, if you made it this far in the video, you should find a better use of your free time. And the website again is fold.space with a 0 instead of an O.